Hey, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. Welcome to another episode of Real Mob Stories with James Proctor, where we discuss the American Mafia from its rich history to what's happening in the genre. If you haven't done so already, do me a big favor and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you like the content, please smash that like button. Today, I saw an interesting video that Anthony Ruggiano Jr. did where he goes after Joey Merlino, and I thought it was worth going through what Anthony said and sharing some of my thoughts. Anthony's upset because Joey Merlino wants the U.S. government to require cooperators to register with the government and have their addresses on file in a registry like they do with people who have been convicted of sex behavior statutes. I can't say the actual word, but that criminal behavior. He's also going on to discuss his relationship with Joey Merlino that I did not know until today. There are a couple of wild stories I have to question that Anthony said, and I'll give you the reason for my skepticism. Anthony makes the point that without the informants, there'd be no mob genre. We'll discuss whether or not that's true or not. Thank you again for watching today's show, and without further delay, on to our feature presentation. All right, so we're going to actually go through about a 5 minute segment of Anthony Ruggiano's video where he's talking about the problems that he has with Joey Merlino. Also, he's talking about how in this mob genre, if it wasn't for informants, there would be no genre. So I definitely want to talk about that. And then there was a couple of things interesting that he made. I did not realize that he had a relationship with Joey Merlino, or he purports to having that relationship. And so I wanted to bring that up to you because a couple of the things were a little strange that he said, but I'll leave it for all of you to make that decision. So let me go ahead and get started. We have about a 5 minute segment of Anthony Ruggiano Jr.'s show today. So go over to his YouTube channel. It's called Reform Gangster. Go ahead and, check out his content.
I really don't like to talk bad about anybody, but this Joey Molina is just he just gets under my skin. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, I can't say it any other way. The guy and it's because I know him and I know about him and I know who he is and what he is and where he came from. That's why he gets under my skin. Because unlike other people that are on these YouTube channels and other people that have podcasts, I know the guy. You know what I mean? I know the guy. I hung out with the guy. I spoke to the guy. He used to call my house, and I am in the process of getting those tapes. The man used to call my house and ask me to make appointments for him to meet Gambino family captains. But the reason why I'm talking about him today is because he's got this new thing now with this guy, Little Snuff, and they're talking about informants being Megan acted like pedophiles, that informants should register where they live like a pedophile. And that's disgusting. That's disgusting. It disgusts me. He disgusts me now. At one time, him and his crew were not my idols, but they were like my heroes. I mean, he wants us to be registered because we're murdering drug dealers, and he's a murdering drug dealer. I mean, come on. He is a murdering drug dealer that's unconfessed, unconvicted. Yeah, do informants lie on the stand? Yes, sure, some of them do. Some of them do. I'm sure some of them do. He beat a lot of murder raps that he was guilty of. You know what I mean? Just because he beat the case doesn't mean he didn't commit the crime. Let's be real. His crew, and I'm going to.
All right. So a couple of things I wanted to mention on that is said that Joey Merlino would call Anthony's house. So we've got, and we'll later find out he was an underboss at the time, not the boss when he did this. So he would call Anthony Ruggiano's house and would be asking for captains to, set up meetings with or whatever. So we'll discuss that a little bit later because he goes in a little more detail. It's a little bit unusual, but at the same time, he's talking about this registry. And so what Joey Merlino said was that he feels that just as offenders have to register online on an online registry so that people, in the neighborhood know who they are. He believes that informants should be also required to fill out a registry, and so that the American public would know that they're living next door to an informant. But the reality is that would never happen. Obviously, I don't know if Joey was being serious about it or not, but the reality is that would never happen, because one, we know how the U.S. government is. We know how they will go about protecting informants. We know about that. You have the witness protection program. We have WITSEC, as they call it, and it's not possible to do that. They don't want people to, that puts these informants' lives at risk for what they're doing. So, even though I'm not in favor of informants, the reality is that, that's a non-starter. That would never happen. You would never have any sort of registry like that. And then, so the other thing I thought was interesting is that he's stating that Joey Merlino beat his cases, that, that he did not, just because he was found not guilty doesn't mean that he didn't commit those crimes. And so, a couple of things on that. We also have the corollary. We have many people that get convicted of crimes that they never committed. We see that all the time. We see a lot of wrongful convictions. And, with the American judicial system, we want justice, of course, but at the same time, we want to make sure that people are not convicted. We've got people that have been put to death because they've been convicted of crimes that they never took part in. So, yeah, I'm sure there are people that do get out that committed crimes. They're able to get away with it. But at the same time, regarding Joey Merlino, regarding what happened, we only can go with what the courts decided. The court said that he did not commit homicide. What we do know is that he got convicted of gambling. We know of those other offenses that he took care of. Did he happen to lie and get away with it? He's never stated that. And again, the only thing I can go by is what happened with the verdict and what the jury decided. You had a jury of 12 people that made that decision that he was not guilty of homicide. And so that's the only thing that we can go with.
Say this again. His crew, him, Lance, Stevie, Georgie Borghese, and on and on and on, they took over a city. They took over the city of Philadelphia. I give them props. When I was in the street and I met with them, I loved them. They were my heroes. Here's a group of young Italian guys that took over a city. They didn't take over the city because they were good. They took over the city because they were dangerous, and everybody paid them because they knew if they didn't pay them, they would get a bullet. That's why they paid them, not because they were good guys or they were giving out bicycles at Christmas time or turkeys at Thanksgiving. They paid them because they knew the penalty was death. That's why they paid them. So they took over the city. Now he's got a podcast, and now it's rat. Every word out of his mouth is rat, mother effer, chain smoking cigarettes, drinking whiskey, gambling, degenerate gambler. He's someone that everybody should want their sons to take after because he's such a wonderful person, because he gives out bicycles at Christmas time. So that he's wonderful. And he gives out turkeys at Thanksgiving, But the bottom line is he's a criminal. He was a criminal. My opinion, and this is my opinion, is why he has a podcast now is because the government was torturing him. They really were. I mean, let's be real. They were never going to let him alone. It was just going to be one case. If he stood in the street and he stood active as the boss that he was the official boss of the Philadelphia crime family. When I met him in person, he was the official underboss.
Okay, so we'll get to that part a little later. So what he's talking about is that just because Joey Merlino gives out turkeys at Thanksgiving, toys at Christmas, doesn't mean that he's not, a bad guy. And So, what we see from Anthony is he's attacking him for three things. One, he's talking about him being a chain smoker. Two, he's calling him a degenerate gambler. And three, he's saying that he's drinking. And so, I haven't seen Joey Merlino get inebriated on the air. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but at the same time, a lot of people smoke, a lot of people drink. I don't drink, but at the same time, does that make someone the worst person? Yeah, I don't think so. And I mean, none of these guys are what I call good guys. They're stand-up guys. Stand-up guys, just someone that has not cooperated. It's someone that keeps their oath and all of that. But at the same time, this is a mob genre. These are not angels, and we're not saying that. I'm not saying that I agree with everything that Joey Merlino does, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that like him. He does bring a different perspective to this genre that we haven't had before, and so that's kind of where I come from on this.
He wasn't the boss yet. He was the underboss. And I met him and I brought a message to him from the Gambino family, from Nicky Carrazzo, who was on the ruling panel of the Gambino family. The message I brought to him was they were making guys that lived in South Jersey, and the commission and the five families in New York didn't want them to make anybody from Jersey. The message I brought him was that they had to stop making guys from South Jersey and they could only make guys that came from Philadelphia. That was the message that I brought him, and that he was recognized as the underboss, not the boss. And that's the message I brought him. The only thing he doesn't realize is he should thank informants.
Okay, so what I want to talk about, this is a very, to me, this is pretty explosive. I've never heard this before. So Anthony Ruggiano saying that he gave a message from Nicky Carrazzo. Nicky Carrazzo in the early 2000s was part of the ruling committee that ran the Gambino family. At that point, Anthony Ruggiano was an associate, and he was part of Nicky Carrazzo's crew. What's a little bit hard for me to believe is, why would Nicky Carrazzo, who was a capo regime, also part of, was like an acting boss at some point. I don't know the exact year this happened, but why did they have an associate give that message to an underboss? Thing is an associate would not be the right person to give that information to. If it happened, then that's a shame on the Gambino family. They should be using some sort of made person, someone that's been introduced to Joey Merlino, because Joey Merlino at the time was what he's saying, an underboss of that family. Regarding what was happening in South Jersey, that's actually interesting, and I can actually see that happening because the Gambino family, they had two crews. They had a crew up in the north part of Jersey, and also they had a crew in the south part of Jersey. But normally, my understanding was that the south crew, that was more of the Zip faction. That was the Cherry Hill Gambinos. Maybe there was another crew as well down there. I know the Genovese family was down there in the southern part of Jersey, and they actually had quite a bit of they had a lot more power than any of the other families. Even though the Lacases were there, we had the Gambinos there, the Genovese there, the De Cavalcantes were up more in the Elizabeth area, and so they were telling them to quit making guys from Jersey. And I could see that happening because the De Cavalcante family, the Jersey family, actually had crews in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. So what happened was that the De Cavalcante family was making guys in Brooklyn and in Manhattan, and they had a social club, I believe, and they were infringing upon the territory that had belonged to the Gambinos. And so there was a meeting that took place, and what was told is that the two crews could still operate in New York. The Jersey family could have those two crews operate in New York, but they were not allowed to make any more guys from Brooklyn or from Manhattan, actually from anywhere in the five boroughs. And that agreement took place. So, we saw that happen with the Cavalcante. So I could see that also happening.
And I'm going to tell you why you should thank informants. This genre, whatever you want to call it, was started by informants. It was started by Michael Francis, by Cousin Gene, and Johnny A. Light. They were the pioneers to these podcasts about the mob. They started this. They started me in this. They started me. I have to give props to who I have to give props to. I had knew nothing about this. I got a call one day from Johnny A. Light and my cousin Gene. They wanted to put me on a show. I went on the show, and here I am all these years later. They started this genre. So now the genre started by people that cooperated with the government. He needs to make money because he's a degenerate. He's a degenerate gambler. Can't make no money in any other way. So now what does he do? He starts a podcast. Now he's making money. He's making money. But if it wasn't for informants that opened up this road, this avenue, he wouldn't have a podcast. And I wouldn't have a podcast.
That's a good question, actually. So what would happen if there weren't informants? Would we be able to, where would we be at with this genre? And he's saying, well, that Joey Merlino should thank the informants that he has a podcast. I don't believe that. Let's just say that John A. Light, none of these guys had come on, and Joey Merlino, came out onto YouTube. Obviously, he would be popular, may even more popular, because it would be such news that you have a mob guy that has a show. And I believe it was John A. Light. He was the first one to come out on YouTube. I think Michael Francis didn't really do this until a little bit later. I believe it was around 2020 during the pandemic. Same with Sammy Gravano. It was around 2019 or so. And so, but I know that John A. Light had his show for several years, and Anthony Ruggiano has been on for a few years, and we know about Gene Borello being on with John A. Light. But that is an interesting point. I see this through history. So, for me, I go through a lot of documents, court documents. I talk to people, and the reality is that without informants, a lot of this information we wouldn't have, even the deep history going back. And you've had informants even back in the 30s and 40s. I mean, people talk about Valachi being the first one, but he really wasn't. You've had informants going back 100 years nearly. And so you just have to realize, if you're going to get information, you're going to unfortunately have to work with cooperators and informants. And for me as a historian, I acknowledge that. And so you won't get that information from, let's say, Joey Merlino. We saw his interview on Vlad TV, and he didn't reveal anything. That was honestly, interviewing Joey, you're not really going to, find out anything. For people that watch Joey, they're doing it for the entertainment. They want to hear what he's going to say, and and going after the informants, that's his niche in this. This is what he does. He spends, 5-10 minutes of his show going after informants each time. But at the same time, he's also bringing on guests. He's trying to be entertaining. He does the live shows. And so, I mean, that's just the reality of it. But, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. Do you think Anthony Ruggiano Jr. is correct? Do you feel like without informants, there'd be no genre? What do you think of Joey Merlino and his what he thinks needs to be done by having a registry of informants? Let me know in the comments, because I think we have a really interesting discussion about that. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and God bless you always.